Hi, Joe. So lovely to be back with another bite-sized understanding of trauma and how we can heal it. Last time we were speaking about trauma being an invisible guest and being expressed in symptoms of anger, overwhelm,
Yeah.
numbness. And today I want us to talk about how we heal trauma. What do we do with that? What are your thoughts? What is your experience with working with clients and healing trauma?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is recreating safety.
Mm,
And then that's kind of a big, broad term, but to practicalize what I mean, um, when I talk about healing trauma, sometimes people think what I'm doing is I'm taking somebody back to the moment where they were traumatized and I'm helping them relive it, when really that's not what I'm doing. And I try to avoid that actually, because it's not about forcing yourself to re-experience. It's more about in this moment, as you are right now, today, can we start to give you a sense of safety and ownership of yourself first? And then we take that safety into whatever healing work we need to do. Because what trauma is it's all those moments where we didn't have safety, we didn't have support. Something happened to us and we internalized it because we couldn't deal with it. And so going back and reliving that without the tools, without the safety, without the support, that's not really healing. In some ways, I think that's abusive.
mm,
And so to me, healing trauma begins with cultivating a sense of safety first and foremost, so that as you're starting to feel that safety, as you're starting to come into an embodiment of yourself, and then you start looking back, you're not looking back as the traumatized victim, you're looking back as someone that does have the tools now that you didn't have before. And that's critical. That's critical to what I do in trauma work. And I think it's a concept that's easy to be missed, but we're not going back to rewrite history and we're not going back to re-experience your trauma. We're going back to integrate because you now have the space.
right. So wow, I'm just trying to take that in and see how it comes up for me. Um, we're in our DNA, we're hardwired to togetherness. And I think in that togetherness,
Yeah.
I feel you feeling me, feeling you is where we co-regulate each other. And for me, when I can be in a space with somebody, with I'm here with you right now, and I think that brings a sense of calm, then we can begin to integrate.
Yeah.
Because what trauma does is trauma often isolates and separates. And again, it's not necessarily like we were talking about the big T traumas. It can be little things. It can be an argument where we get into blaming somebody. That separates. So it can be in our daily lives. We're re-traumatized all the time. And where we can create a space of, we're here together. I'm here with you. Thomas Hubel gives a beautiful example of a child in a park who goes off and gets frightened and comes back, and the parent has two options. Either can say there's nothing to be afraid of, which really doesn't validate the child, or come, let's look
Yeah.
together. And that's what I say to people. I'll say, I know this is really scary. I'm here with you. Can we look together? Can I hold what you would call a flashlight? We look into the room together and see if we can clean it up, and that will be part of the healing integration. Feeling it in our bodies. Where do we feel it in our bodies? Because as Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. It's there in our
Yes. Yeah.
tension. We walk around so contracted, we don't even realize how tense we often are, because we're all, of course, born into a traumatized world where that's a different topic. We're talking about collective trauma.
Yeah.
But on an individual level, we also walk around as if we've got one hand behind us all the time, and we think, oh, we're living a normal life, but we're not using everything that's available to us to heal and to live a more embodied and fuller life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's become so easy to constantly find ways to distract ourselves from the work. And in so many ways, society tends to reward that. Society tends to reward you not being a problem, you not being a burden, you functioning independently, you not needing help from people. Those are all seen as good qualities. And that can really do a lot of harm for someone that is needing help, but is, constantly being met with the conditioning of there shouldn't be anything wrong with you. And if you're needing help, it's because of your failing. And particularly in the West, we have this idea that, if somebody's going through something, they deserve it. They did it to themselves. When it comes to trauma, that's really not the case.
Right.
Trauma happens in the vacuum of having safety, having connection. Because if the safety was there, the trauma wouldn't be as deep. It wouldn't be able to latch into you. And you talked just now about co-regulation and the need. I see that as a need to create safety again. It comes back to being able to know that you're okay on a deep physiological level. And so often that requires the presence of another. And that's an element missing in so much of our lives right now, that oftentimes people that are traumatized learn to stay safe by isolating, and then that becomes a permanent pattern, which is no question why their relationships feel so stuck and unrewarding, or sometimes even scary. Sometimes it feels worse to be in a relationship because all those things come up again.
And lonely. I love that. I love how you're expressing that emotions of vulnerability are not valued. It's seen as a weakness to ask for help and support, but we don't live in a cave. As Thomas Hubel says, we don't live in caves. We live in the marketplace. We're here in society from the minute we were created, right? We're in our mother's wombs. We are together.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be by ourselves. You look at anybody who's been in solitary confinement. It's a terrible, terrible punishment. And we create so much more when we co-create. We are so much more powerful and creative and confident, and just having that other person there who offers us that deep listening and that space, that non-judgmental place, is already so healing. It's already so healing.
So what would you say to somebody that's just starting to navigate this for themselves? What would be like for somebody that's, I think for a lot of people, when they realize that they are dealing with trauma and they get over the hurdle of even saying that to themselves, oftentimes there's an overwhelm of, oh my God, I've been coping with this my entire life. Who I am is just one giant reaction to things that happened to me way back then. Oh my God, what do I do? How do I even start? What would you say to someone like that?
It's such a great question, because usually these people suddenly think things aren't working out for them in the way that they would like. Their relationships are really hurting, or there's a sense of, I'm living with a stranger, or I'm lonely. And I would say, reach out to a trusted friend, reach out to a professional, because again, we don't do it by ourselves. That healing comes in that safe space where we are accepted for who we are. So that really would be where I would start, taking a deep breath and reach out and commend yourself because you did that, because it's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of expansion and growth.
I love that. Yeah. I think my advice would be to, in addition to what Bev just said, really understand that you're not the only person that has had to answer that question. You know, worldwide, people are dealing with trauma in so many ways, and so many people are masking it and suppressing it. And but at the same time, there are people who are just like you, having those aha moments, finally making that connection. And yes, the first moments are overwhelming because you start to see, oh my God, how much has this been a part of my life? It's like you see, you know, there's been this shadow in the background puppeteering you through all those moments. And that's what it was. It wasn't random. But in many ways, that's more scary because now there's a specific thing that's been causing these issues in your life, and you can name it and you can see it, and it becomes a bit more real, a bit more present. And that's an overwhelming feeling. But that feeling will pass as you breathe and remember that this isn't the end for you. This is a beginning, and that you're seeing and making all these connections now because you couldn't before. And as you get used to seeing those connections, they're no longer as traumatizing. And during this time, reach out, find people who are safe, who you can talk to, find people that are trauma informed. Mm-hmm. Look for communities online of people that have been through this, because the next, I think the biggest step is finding the right support, the right community, the right people to talk about this with. Because there are some people you shouldn't bring this up with, and that's okay.
I love that. That is great. Just find your community, find your safe space. Yeah. I love that, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.